Okay, so our stop number 1 in our journey was locking down the leg. Our stop number 2 in the journey is going to be locking down the hip. And I'm going to lock the hip down with what we call a hip sprawl. And if you're familiar with the sprawl in wrestling, that's what I'm going to do, but I'm going to do it to lock down his hip. So I'm doing a pretty nice job here of blocking out his leg, so I'm going to progress. And the way I'm going to progress is to sprawl down and get this hip in contact with this hip. And it's really important that we have hip-to-hip contact, not hip to thigh or hip to knee. That's a mistake people make, so a lot of times people will do this. It's not quite there. You can see my hip is not in contact with this hip here. So I'm going to sprawl out on that hip. So if you pay attention to my right hip here, what it does. There. My right hip is in contact with this hip. And I'm making my back look like this. Like that. One of my feet tucks under his leg here and lifts. Lift, lift. My hips are not symmetrically applying pressure. I have more pressure on this side. Like that, with my hip. Once my hip touches his hip, I own that hip from here to the end of time. I'm never going to let any space develop there. I'm going to prioritize that. So I land here like this and I own it. I own that hip. Hip to hip. My hand here comes back and it assists here. So now as Craig begins to move and try to create some space, I'm really prioritizing that hip contact. It's not going to happen. Hip to hip contact, he's never going to get any space. If he can't get any space, his legs are shut down. So hip sprawl is number 2. One more time. Locking his legs down with my weight. Right. Locking it down with my hand. Locking it down with my foot. Hip sprawl. Hip sprawl. Lift.